All right, good morning or good afternoon, everybody. Today is Wednesday, May the 5th, 2021, and we have, I would say, a fair amount of news relative to what's been happening with recent events. So there's been some follow up on those types of events and things like that. So let's get into it. So first off, Trump launched his own communications platform, but it's hard to say. Like, it's hard to say if it's a blog, if it's, where maybe you can interact with him a little bit more than a blog. It seems to definitely not be a social media thing, a whole social media platform, but it seems like it's a first step, right? So, speaking of Trump, as of the time that I'm recording this, Facebook has ruled that, which is why I waited a little longer this morning to record this, because I wanted to talk about this. Facebook has ruled that Trump will be still banned from the platform. They will be revisiting this in 2 months from now, and they'll be revisiting it every 6 months after that. So essentially, Facebook has sort of their own version of, I guess, what they would refer to as the Supreme Court, with former world leaders on there. Some of them are former prime ministers, presidents, things like that. Now, one of the problems I personally have with this, and this is where I would understand that you would probably have to do a country by country takedown. And what I mean by that is this. So, why is it that Facebook has, again, they're a private company, they could do what they want, but why is it that Facebook has a board of world leaders, some of them not American, that are making a decision about what an American company should do about an American president? Now, I think you see what I'm saying with regards to free speech, because free speech is very different in America than it is in other parts of the world. So people might be saying, okay, so Dave, what would you have us do then? Or what would you have them do? I would say do a country by country, I guess you could say, not vote per se, but scenario where you ask a delegated person, does your government want Trump to be back on Facebook in this country? Because I think in America, to tell all of you the truth, I mean, freedom of speech stands the strongest with the Constitution there, right? More than other countries around the world, particularly, and I'm not trying to downplay other countries, by the way, but in terms of the true amount of freedom of speech that is allowed, because in pure theory, and I'm not saying that I endorse this, but I think you see what I'm getting at, from a legal sense here. From my understanding, in pure theory, certain aspects of hate speech are covered under free speech within the United States Constitution, but that is not the case in the UN, rights and freedoms rules and things like that at the United Nations, which is why I'm saying, you know what? Why should people from other countries be deciding what should happen in America? And some of you may agree with me, some of you may not. I'm just trying to, raise a point here, play devil's advocate a little bit, but ultimately I think what it comes down to is they should have Americans deciding if the American former president should be allowed back on Facebook, and then they should have a representative from each country, each major country, speak on behalf of that government saying, look, we don't want our people and the country here, let's just say, for example, Italy, the Italian people or the Italian government doesn't want to see the president on Facebook, and that's what we've decided, and that's it. But if you go to America, you could still see it. And I say this because it is in fact possible to do technologically. There are certain things, for example, that Facebook and many other companies censor in certain countries and then show in others. So again, maybe what I'm saying here is a little bit controversial, but I think you're seeing what I'm saying because it does raise a very valid point. And not just about America, by the way, folks. I would say this about Canada. I would say this about any country. And a lot of people will say, well, Dave, to play devil's advocate very quickly, America gets involved with the rest of the world's problems. And that's not fair either. And I would say I agree with you. I don't think America should be involved in so many other countries around the world. But again, it's the whole concept of power and control at a different angle. So anyways, please forgive me for that little rant. I think it's important that we covered that though. The next thing is that Peloton is recalling its treadmills on an even bigger scale after over 70 reported injuries. Well, I think 1 or 2 people died from it, and now with all these injuries being called in, it's better they just do a recall and just say, listen, we apologize and stuff like that. I mean, an apology is not nearly enough for someone who died, but I don't know, like, can you imprison these CEOs or whatever if they, assuming that they had evidence that they knew it was dysfunctional or something like this before they released it? Now, if it's truly nobody's fault, nobody knew, then, I mean, that's just life, right? That shit happens, unfortunately. So the next thing is that Derek Chauvin filed a motion asking for a new trial. Look, he has the right. He's got the legal right. Let him do it. Whether he's And it's, I would, because of freedom of speech, I would say this about anybody else, to be honest. I mean, I know morally and ethically it's a different story, but he's got the right to do it while he's in jail, so let him do it, right? The next thing is that, interestingly enough, New Zealand refuses to call what's happening in China a genocide, although they did express, they say they expressed grave concerns about what's going on there. But from my understanding, New Zealand and Australia refuse to acknowledge or say that what is going on in China to the Muslim Uyghurs specifically is genocide. They say they have grave concerns with regards to humanitarian issues and rights there, but in that situation, but they're not calling it a genocide. Now, it's interesting because this is the first time in many years, from my understanding, that one or two out of the Five Eyes, because again, Australia, New Zealand, the UK, America, and Canada, Five Eyes, sorry. I had a brain fart there. This is the first time where a handful of countries within that group have disagreed with the other countries. So look, I say this carefully because I don't want to say that it's fake when it's not, or, vice versa. But look, we saw what happened with the Syrian gas attacks. It's been highly debunked at this point. The mainstream media in the West will now report it, but for those interested, I can provide sources and things like that for it being, about the gas attack being faked. Now, the reason I bring this up is because, could it be possible, now just hear me out, could it be possible that there is not a genocide of the Muslim Uyghurs going on there? Now, I doubt that, because I would not put it past China to do those things, but I don't know any other reason why New Zealand and Australia would refrain from calling it that. Maybe their intelligence sources can't confirm it on their end, and so they don't want to publicly say something. I don't know. That's the only thing I can logically think of, unless I'm missing something. The next thing is that Kevin McCarthy said that, Republican leader, said that he's done with Liz Cheney, and was even caught on a hot mic on Fox News saying that as well. Look, if they want to kick her out and most of the party sides with Trump, that's just the way it is. I mean, if more than 70% of Republicans said they stand behind Trump and they don't want to they don't want to stand behind Liz Cheney and her disagreement with Trump and that whole ideology, look, it's whether you agree with it or not, you do it democratically within your own party. You take a vote, and it seems like they want her out. So again, the next thing is that the DNC, Democratic National Committee, is already looking at over 20 different potential Republican candidates running in 2024. One of them is Tucker Carlson from Fox News. Now, it's been speculated that he was going to run at some point. Interestingly enough, I don't know if this is... Okay, apparently Biden has no plans to run in 2024. He's kind of dodged the question lately when asked, but he's also kind of said, also initially too that he was not going to run in 2024. A handful of months ago he said that. The question becomes, is Biden passing the baton on to Kamala? Because if he is, then at that point, his team becomes Kamala's team, right? We can argue very strongly that the current administration is a somewhat slightly varied version of the Obama administration. Right? Joe Biden talks to Obama on an almost daily basis from what they're reporting. So again, it's very possible that that's the it's very possible that that's the case. So it's hard to say, but I would also say too that, I mean, when you're looking from a strategical perspective at who you're going to go against politically, you have to weigh all the options, because someone can come up last minute, file to run for president, and that's it. Right? It's that simple. As long as you file to run for president on time and you do all the necessary regulations and things like that, anybody can run. So I can understand why the strategy of the DNC is already looking forward. The DNC does not want a repeat of what happened with Trump. It's that simple. The next thing is that 50 Cent, the rapper, has moved from New York to Texas for a couple things. He couldn't stand the COVID restrictions and the high taxes. Look, I don't blame him. And I bring this up not because it's 50 Cent, but because he's just one of many to have moved to Texas. Tons of people from California, celebrities, actors, political commentators, musicians have moved from California to Texas. So, I mean, it's happening. I mean, people don't like the high taxes. Just like California and New York, same concept, I would imagine. I'm sure there's different laws and, there's different percentage of taxes, but the same concept, right? Higher taxes, more regulations, because they're democratically run, right? That's just the way that Democrats normally operate. So, look, it is a free country. You want to go to Texas? By all means, man. The next thing is that there was an alleged COVID scare at London's G7 late last night, as India's delegates have tested positive. So they'll be, I believe, resuming meetings from their hotel rooms or whatever it is virtually instead of in person. Okay. The next thing is that a French journalist that was kidnapped in Mali has pled for help from the French government to free him from rebel fighters. He even made a video. I don't know how the heck he made a video. Maybe they let him make a video, or they didn't know that he still has a phone on him. I don't know. Those are tough situations, and I'm not trying to defend the French government. I'm just saying in general, it's bigger than that, because when a country kidnaps another national, like another, for example, like how Canada arrested, they say that nicely on the front end, the vice president of Huawei as a strategical move with China because the U.S. told Canada to do it. It becomes an intelligence game, it becomes a proxy war, and it's even bigger because now this journalist has indirectly involved himself in a chess game because he is now a pawn in this chess game. Now, I understand as a journalist, you have to be brave, you have to go out and you have to report on things in areas that are not necessarily safe relative to what other people deem to be safe. I understand that. But I mean, look, I'm not trying to be an asshole, but he chose this, he took the risk, right? I don't know the full context, but this is what I would assume. And if I'm wrong, then I do apologize. But at the same time, look, the French government now has to weigh their odds from an intelligence perspective, and that's one of the reasons why I like doing the Kraken episodes, because I think it's important to understand the intelligence apparatuses behind this. If not, then it just becomes, like another news show, so to speak, right? The next thing is that Hamas says that Israel is going to pay a heavy price for the attacks on East Jerusalem. I doubt it. If anything, it'll be asymmetrical and an attempt at an asymmetrical response. I mean, I doubt it. Israel's too powerful, excuse me. So in my humble opinion, whether you like it or not, they're strong, man. So the next thing is that one person was killed in Israel's attack on Syria's Latakia, targeting Iranian-linked targets. Look, here's the thing, and I've spoken about this with some of you one-on-one and things like that with regards to what's happening with Israel in the Middle East. It's tough. It's not easy, not just because of the history of it, but the politics of it. I don't want to comment too much on this because, look, all I'm going to say is that, and the reason why I'm not going to comment is because I don't know myself where I stand with a lot of these Middle Eastern affairs, largely because I don't know the context, let alone what's truly going on behind the scenes. None of us really do, right? So at the end of the day, I mean, all I'm going to say is Israel's going to keep dropping bombs. Simple. They're going to keep dropping bombs on people they feel or groups they feel they need to be protected from. And look, if they're backed by the U.S., that's just the way it is right now. It's true. So the next thing is that Turkey's Erdogan and the Saudi king Salman, I think that's how it's Solomon, have discussed more ties over the phone, economically, politically, things like that. Look, Erdogan in Turkey, he's in it. Let me just put it in the nicest way I could, or the most, I guess we could say, respectful way. He's an interesting guy. Let's put it that way. From my understanding, him and Putin don't exactly they get along, but Putin doesn't tell him certain things and stuff like that. Like if you watch Oliver Stone's documentary, the Putin interviews, when he talks to Putin about it, it's interesting to see with Erdogan. He's from what I understand, he's not liked. Let's put it that way. So the next thing is that many who moved to Hong Kong, many Chinese nationals who moved to Hong Kong because it offered more freedoms than anywhere else in China, are becoming increasingly anxious. Well, see, here's the thing too, because Hong Kong is looking at a fake news law, which again, ironically works in favor of the CCP. They're exploiting the whole alleged disinformation campaign around the world, right? Which we could argue the mainstream media is the real disinformation campaign. But anyways, let's put that aside for a second. Hong Kong and the Chinese government, or the CCP, are saying, well, look, there's all this disinformation around the world. We got to protect ourselves from it. So they use that to justify, right, blocking and censoring independent journalism, true independent journalism, right? Not that there was much there initially, but the next thing is that EU regulators have begun reviewing China's Sinovac vaccine. Well, let's see what they find, right? The next thing is that Myanmar nationals have been given safe passage to Delhi to seek UN refuge status. I mean, look, I guess that's one of the good things about the United Nations, right? With regards to the refugee status, if you genuinely need help, assuming the UN comes through for most people and not just small groups, and then the media says, oh, look, the UN's helping. So again, it's all context, right, and perspective. I mean, unless I'm missing something there. But anyways, the next thing is that Australia has retreated on its jail threats for Indian travelers amid fury, because Australia said not only are Indians banned from, or people from India, excuse me, I should say, are banned from traveling to Australia right now. But if they do end up trying to sneak through, or one of them sneaks through the system, Australia said they're going to jail them because of how serious they're saying COVID is, and how much they do not want it to get there. I think allegedly there's only a handful of cases there. Look, I had a feeling there was going to be backlash about this. I had a gut feeling. I'm not trying to say I told you so to anybody, but I had a gut feeling this was going to happen. You can't do that stuff. I mean, it really does come in violation of certain laws and things like that, even international law, regardless of how bad this alleged virus gets. And again, for the sake of YouTube, right? Regardless of how bad this sickness gets, let's call it, you can only infringe on people's personal rights so much until people start freaking out, and rightfully so, right? The next thing is that United States' Anthony Blinken, I think that's his first name, Anthony, Blinken tells North Korea that the ball is in your court now. I look, that could mean a lot of different shit, so I don't know. I mean, in terms of, I guess, negotiations, because initially the United States said, oh, well, we don't negotiate with terrorists or whatever, and then Trump met with him, and then to have an allegedly peaceful dialogue, and then, we're here now, so... I don't know what that means. The ball's in your court. What? Fire another rocket? I don't know. I'm not joking. So the next thing is that a small ethnic group is fearing extinction as Tigray enters its 6th month of war. See, I wanted to bring this up because it's so unfortunate to see just small, ethnic cultures, groups of people just doing their thing in countries that are not as heavily protected and secured, like, Europe or the West or things like that. And it's unfortunate because they're really trying to stay out of these things, just certain cultures of people living in their own part of the land, in their own part of the world, just doing their thing. And then all of a sudden, some external war comes in and interferes. Now, when you say external, you might be saying, Dave, it's not external, it's in the country. And I would say, yeah, I get it. But, these small, isolated groups, they didn't do anything to anybody. It's unfortunate. So the next thing is that Libya's top diplomat calls on Turkey to withdraw foreign fighters. I doubt Erdogan's going to listen. I doubt it. The next thing is that British Royal Marines are testing jetpacks to board ships that can climb up to 12,000 feet in the air. And I saw some footage of this. I'm not going to lie. It looks pretty damn cool. It looks fun. The question becomes, is it going to be easy or hard to man? That's what it comes down to. So, look, if you can go up to 12,000 feet, that's insane. I forgot how long it can go for in terms of how much fuel it has and things like that. But I mean, that's phenomenal. That's super cool. Like, and maybe some of you may be saying, Dave, what the hell are you talking about? I saw a tape of it this morning. I saw a clip, and it just looked super cool. Looked super smooth. It sort of looked very similar to the way in which Iron Man in the movies flies with his suit. Very smooth. It's not like it's jaggedy with the flames keep popping out at the bottom and you have to keep yourself up constantly. It's pretty, it's a smooth flight, let's call it. The next thing is that the Facebook... Oh, sorry, I already reported that. The final thing is that a secret alleged Department of Justice memo on a decision on whether or not to charge Trump with obstruction of justice must be released as ordered by a judge. So allegedly, William Barr, Attorney General William Barr at the time, hit a memo that basically discussed the fact that they were not going to charge Trump with obstruction of justice. And it was very strongly argued at the time that he should have been charged with obstruction of justice. I personally, I would have to revisit that to give all of you my opinion, because it's been a while, but we have to be vigilant of the fact that Trump and his administration have constantly been attacked over and over and over. But at the same time, too, if William Barr, in pure legal theory, did hide something, they're already talking that he may have have him removed from the bar, like the legal bar, not being able to actually be a lawyer and things like that. I don't think William Barr cares at this point. As long as his freedom is not in jeopardy, I really don't think he cares. That guy, if you look into William Barr's background, I'm pretty damn certain that guy was CIA for a very long time and on top of that, he's got business interests in companies and stuff like that. The guy's worth, I think, like $100 million, somewhere around there. He's got nothing to worry about. The only thing he's got to worry about is his freedom, in my humble opinion, unless there's more to it that we don't know publicly, right? So anyways, we have a great early release episode for members coming out later today, which is going to be awesome. 2-hour conversation, and we have a Zoom call for the top tier members later tonight on Patreon, and we'll catch all of you later in the day. Cheers.